Our protagonist, the young Master Luke, was the most powerful cultivator in the world. However, he had a problem. All 5 of his students were extremely jealous and wanted to have him only for themselves. Because of that, the girls ended up creating a trap and put him in a tight spot. From now on, he had to give his final word and choose only one of them as his wife. If he chose one of them, the other 4 would end his life. So, basically, our boy was out of options. But to get to this moment, we need to go back a little in the story. Luke had the purest yang energy ability. This was the energy that flowed through the bodies of all people. And after mastering this ability, he became invincible. However, learning and reaching this level was extremely difficult. Besides training his body, he also needed to cultivate his mind. Luke was the only one to learn these techniques, except for his matriarch of the Mim. Actually, he was the only one after her, and that ended up making him the current master of the Mim. Literally, he was the most powerful cultivator of the Terrio immortal realm, and his clan was the most respected on the entire continent. Besides being the most feared, he also had a huge legion of fans. And, since the boy was handsome, he felt very proud. He even said he should be considered invincible in this world. However, we see that he was running away. One of his students was chasing him. Using a sealing technique, she said he wouldn't run anymore. Summoning thunder powers, she was already preparing a new attack. This was Xial, the celestial teacher of the Terrio immortal realm. After reciting the magic words, she releases her spell. In a very passionate way, she said she would have Luke only for herself. With enormous power, our hero ends up feeling threatened. That thunder had so much strength, it could even destroy the entire Earth. However, we know our protagonist was supposedly invincible. He ends up taking all the damage, and after falling on a mountain, it is completely obliterated. He makes a joke, saying she's kind of strong. At that moment, another student appears in front of him. He already starts trembling in fear. This was Fei Hong, the demonic master of the Terrio realm. Fighting one student was already hard. Imagine fighting 2. And the guy still says good morning to little Hong. The girl asks if he'd like to have breakfast with her, and without giving time for answers, she forms a hand seal. The girl had a Buddha spell. With her 30 celestial powers, she said she would capture him. You'll be completely mine. And she already throws a punch at the poor guy's face. He travels downward so fast he breaks the sound barrier. Even screaming, he can't avoid falling hard. The strike was so strong it broke his protective cloak. Finally, the third sister comes from afar. This was Yu Yun Yun, the sect master's assistant. In a cute way, she asks if he was okay. And the boy answers, "Ah, sure. I'm great. I'm really good." That was all a tactic to show off his charm. Touching our hero's fist, she recites a seal. He already starts to feel enormous pressure on his body. The entire area around starts breaking apart because he had fallen into a trap. This was an extremely powerful sealing spell. "I can't believe it, Sister Yoon. Even you?" In a slightly crazy way, she said she wouldn't let him escape. And finally, another sister appears, sitting on a gourd. This was Yuzo, the current master of the 5 Poisons sect. Preparing to use her technique, she said that wasn't enough to hold the master. With that, she activates her poison power and ends up casting the celestial poisoning technique. A small drop goes to our hero and touches his forehead. "I can't believe you're doing this. Seriously, Zhu? You're going to poison me?" Respectfully, they say not even that would be enough to stop him. And lastly, Sister Mubai, from the Sword Clan. She said he would be able to heal from that poison. So the poor guy couldn't believe they had set up that perfect plan. About to launch the final attack, she summons a gigantic sword from the sky. The clouds get heavy, and from there a bright light appears above Luke. That way, colossal energy swords fall over the poor boy. As he was sealed, he couldn't do anything. The place is completely destroyed, sending wind blasts everywhere. This was the final seal, the set of draconic swords. I hope this is enough to hold him. Yeah, alright. Congratulations to you all. I was the one who taught you all this, right? All 5 young students had gathered to trap the master. After many years of cultivation, he had become the most powerful in the world. He was even considered the most worthy and strongest on the entire continent. Combining all his knowledge and power, he could defeat anyone. Well, that was in theory, right? Because in practice, he ended up losing. His 5 strongest students joined forces against him, and the poor guy wasn't able to fight back. Pretending innocence, Luke asked why they were doing that to him. Besides that, they organized a very orchestrated attack. And you girls don't even get along with each other. Each of them had very strong feelings for Master Luke. They get embarrassed by that scene, cheeks blushing. The Poison Girl said they all needed an answer. Since he had been stalling all this time, they decided to trap him. And now he had to say, once and for all, which one of them he would choose as his wife. At that moment, the boy realized he was screwed. His situation was not good at all. He gets sad because even after mastering everything, he was still defeated by his own students. The protagonist hadn't chosen any of them because his master had given him terrible news. When he finally mastered the secret technique, his master revealed that he couldn't be with any woman. If he ever practiced dual cultivation, he would die. Tell me, is it worth being the strongest in the world and not being able to be with any woman? Comment below what you would choose. Luke got angry and started kicking his master, saying he only said that now. He even asked if he could give up the technique to be with girls, but his master said that wasn't possible. With that, he had a huge disadvantage. Being the most powerful man in the world, all he really wanted was to be with girls, but that was impossible. Do you know what dual cultivation means? Because we're going to talk about that term a lot in this video. So, if you know what it means, comment below if you really know. Receiving several marriage proposals, he had to refuse them all. Even his students offered to practice this so-called dual cultivation with him, and just by getting excited, he would already feel sick and vomit. Another student asked to practice swordplay with him. I know you guys are naughty and understood what she meant. And there he was, the poor guy, vomiting and feeling sick. Another student asked to stay with him through the night. And yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. Again, our hero got excited and started to feel sick, even vomiting. Just thinking about dual cultivation with them, he would feel ill and get sick. At the height of his youth, the guy couldn't enjoy earthly life. He would die without ever being with a woman. But of course, he didn't say anything to any of them. That's why they were all cornering him with that final question. Our hero even tried to stall as much as possible, giving a cheap little speech. However, his students said he needed to decide soon who would spend the rest of their life with him. They had grown up with our hero since childhood, so it would be very cruel to do this to them. At times like this, he had to be a man and choose only one. I don't mind giving you my toxic love, as long as you show that despair. These girls here are crazy, and Xiao said that today would be his last. My God, how am I going to solve this? If I choose one of them, the other 4 will want to attack me. He even says he couldn't handle the power of 4 girls together. I love my life too much to lose it so soon. Hurry up, young master. You need to give your answer now. If he kept stalling, those swords would drain all his life. And yes, it was true. If he took too long, he wouldn't have a chance to escape alive. Even if he was invincible, he could still be defeated in practice. However, he was super powerful, and of course, had a card up his sleeve. He lets out a chuckle and says they were wrong to think he had no way out. You really think you'd defeat the master with the very techniques I taught you? The sky opens up and a strong light shines over the entire place. He was transcending to the world of immortals. This would be his last final move. If he didn't do it, he would probably lose in this physical world. And so, he departed for the immortal world, leaving behind all his powerful cultivation body. He was a little sad, having escaped by leaving everything behind. All the years of training, he had worked hard to make his sect #1 through merit. Besides that, he faced many enemies, defeated countless monsters, and also gave several speeches to people from all continents. Even though he could deceive and convince everyone, he didn't fool himself. In the end, what he wanted most was to practice dual cultivation with his students. So keep watching to see if he will finally get what he wanted. That guy was naughty. And in the end, he didn't manage to do anything. You almost feel sorry for our protagonist, because with tears in his eyes, he left for the world of immortals. With that, he left behind everything he had learned and cultivated. See you Xiao, see you Yuyun, see you Mubai, Hong, Fei, Yuzu. I'll miss you all. But wait a minute, what are these 5 celestial energies following me? That's exactly what was happening. The girls didn't leave him alone even when the guy was going to paradise. All 5 of his students were also ascending to the heavens. That meant he wouldn't have peace even in the immortal world. However, now he was giving up his yang cultivation, which means he could practice dual cultivation. As soon as he arrives in this new world, he asks what place that was, because it was very different. Even the architecture of that world had a certain peculiarity. It seemed like the powers of his body had really disappeared, and he was back to square one. At that moment, he hears a noise and realizes he's next to a beautiful girl. And the best part, he was lying next to her. The guy already gets all excited and sees that she was a blonde elf with rosy skin. The elf's beauty was such that he was sure he was in the heavens. His cheeks even turned red. Right after, he started circling the girl and said this world was perfect. No wonder the immortal world was so extraordinary. However, he had that problem of not being able to perform dual cultivation. Or better, he had already lost this curse, because he also lost his power. So the guy already gets excited and starts thinking nonsense. But he quickly tells himself that he can't have that kind of impulsive thought, because what he really wanted was to marry this elf, because she was very beautiful. And like a good old shameless guy, he starts blowing kisses in the air. At that moment, the boy hears a noise. It was that blonde elf who had woken up and was seeing this embarrassing situation. She gets angry, with red cheeks. Wait, this was a mistake. I can explain. Besides having bad luck on Earth, he was also having bad luck in the other world. A meeting with the elves is held to decide what to do with him. The guy was hanging upside down. That elf said he had invaded her room. However, one of them points at the boy saying he was very handsome and shouldn't be punished. That's right, he's way too handsome. We should let him go. And meanwhile, he was just enjoying the scenery. This world is really amazing. Not a single flaw. He even thinks it was worth it to come live in this place. The immortal realm was much better than he imagined. The village leader ends up arriving. That elf named Luna said the boy would finally get what he deserved. She explained to the elf that the boy was malicious. However, upon seeing the splendid beauty of our protagonist, she becomes hypnotized. It's not possible that someone this handsome could be evil. They had never seen such a handsome orc before. But Luna keeps saying he wasn't an orc, but a human. What a beautiful human. You must have gotten lost. What happened? The elves didn't want to punish our hero because he was just too handsome. And since Luna said he was standing in her room staring at her, that was something serious. In his defense, our protagonist said he had a disease and needed to stare at people in a weird way. And that was already enough to convince the village leader. That way, all the other elves fall in love, saying he was just a poor thing. Poor guy, folks. He just has a disease. I confess I laughed a lot at this part, guys. A bit confused, Lana asks if he wouldn't suffer any punishment. However, the only thing that happened was that he was taken to the leader's room. As soon as he got there, Luke started to get tense, feeling cornered. The chief approaches him, saying this traveler would now be her new guest. Feeling something soft on his back, the boy became embarrassed. Right after, the leader began throwing all her charm at our hero, and he said he didn't know this region very well. Then she simply jumped on him, saying she would teach him everything about the place. Yeah, right, I bet you'll teach me everything. At that moment, Lana opens the door to interrupt the lovebirds. Startled, the leader asks what happened. The girl says they received signs of orc activity. With that, she walks toward the boy, very angry. And after grabbing his clothes, Lana starts threatening him. The elf thought he was a spy, and so she started slapping our protagonist's face. That makes the leader a bit discouraged, and she asks why the girl was hitting the boy. In response, the girl repeats, saying this shameless guy was an orc spy, but Luke swears he didn't do anything wrong. This poor guy just keeps getting screwed. They would need to call for help since they couldn't fight those monsters. But since they had already reached that point, only one thing remained. The leader kneels before our hero. In the name of our elven village, would you help us? Who could resist a request like that? The orcs were natural enemies of the elves. That's because thousands of years ago, the two races were very close. I'd say a little too close, if you know what I mean. But one day, a magical artifact ended up being left on the ground. The elves asked the demon race not to leave that item lying around. However, the demon women said it wasn't them. And with that, the two sides started fighting. All those years of incredible friendship were destroyed in an instant. So the elves and demons became mortal enemies. And soon after, they began to hate each other. All that resentment was passed down from generation to generation. The elves ended up being descendants of the moon goddess, and the orcs are descendants of the demons of the earth. However, it was a great mystery what power that item held. You're going to see that this story is quite strange, and I doubt you won't laugh while hearing it. Our protagonist realized it was a pretty naughty story. However, the elves were very innocent and said they couldn't fight the orcs. That's because, when facing those monsters, the elves would get weak and blush. Luke understood exactly what was going on, since this guy had a dirty mind. And the strangest thing of all is that the leader liked him from the beginning. In response, she said it was because of a prophecy. After bringing a book, she shows the prophecy that said a foreigner would save the village. Moreover, this traveler would be someone handsome and strong. According to the prophecy's calendar, that was the date the hero would appear. Lana doubts the story and ends up sliding her finger over the notebook. She notices the ink was still fresh and even accuses the village leader of writing it herself. Look at the face of our hero with that elf on top of him. Meanwhile, the leader gives a lame excuse, saying it was just the book's magic. She even goes over and asks the girl to stop saying that in front of the hero. At that moment, he already starts to wonder if this really wasn't the immortal world. It could just be a parallel universe. Throughout his whole adventure, he always came across lucky encounters. It was like finding a stick and discovering it was actually a magical artifact, or fishing a fish and realizing it was a legendary fish, or buying a cheap ring and then discovering it was an ancestral item, or when you're thrown off a cliff and are rescued by a beautiful waifu. This prophecy situation could very well be one of those lucky encounters. After agreeing to help, the leader touches his chest, saying he was a very noble person. All right, I'll help you. And in return, you'll give me lots of money, right? No, we're going to give you 3 beautiful servants. I'm sure this is paradise. Send me those wonderful elves right now. The leader even ends up offering herself as his servant, but he gets a knock on the head. Lana says he should stop acting like a troublemaker. Then the guy says he needs some time to prepare. He goes to the bathroom for a moment of peace and to think about how to defeat those monsters. If you remember, he had lost all his cultivation. Besides, the energy in this world wasn't yang energy. The only option left was to resort to his spiritual weapons, and even to his bag of magical items. But he didn't have the strength to handle those powerful weapons. He ends up remembering something that could help him. After reaching into his magical arsenal, he pulls out an item. This was the hope of the elven village. With this, he might not embarrass himself and could defeat the monsters. In his hand was a paper doll, and in the other, a wooden sword. The poor guy thought he'd find better items inside. But with those 2 pieces of junk, he couldn't do much. The magical artifacts had been replaced by old and weak items. My God, this isn't possible! Now I'm screwed! I'm going to get beaten like a bug! With that, he throws the items back into the arsenal. The paper doll and the sword were level C artifacts. He was so empty of power that he couldn't access his spiritual treasures. And with that, he starts to panic. Outside, someone was spying on Luke. The guy opens the door running and grabs the girl's arm. And who was there, trying to peek through the window, was Lana. I know you liked tsunderes, those cute and hot-tempered girls. Why were you spying while I was peeing? I wasn't doing that, no. I was just passing by. Oh, come on, girl. You were looking through the window, I saw you. I just wanted to see if you weren't a spy. The village leader shows up and asks what that discussion was, and he accuses that girl of being naughty. Besides, she had probably seen his treasures. The village leader heard that word, his treasures, and immediately thought something else. She even starts getting a little more excited. What do you mean? She saw your treasures? Wait, leader, you got it all wrong. The woman transforms and starts dragging our protagonist, looking for those treasures he supposedly had. After a while, they manage to gather the best archers of the village. All right, so we need to see if they're really good. Luke draws the entire plan on how to defend the village. Right after, training begins. He even shows how it's done. As expected, the elves smelled very nice, and the guy gets all flirty. But Lana was there and punches him in the face. The other elf was preparing to shoot, and with the best intentions, he gets down on the ground showing where the target was. Then he looks up. Seriously, guys. At this moment, I almost died laughing. He runs away from the girl, and she keeps chasing him. After taking a lot of hits from Lana, he says the archers were really good. Now the only thing that could make them better was them going to his room and getting personal tips. These elves were really innocent and all got worried, asking if they could go now. They didn't even notice the shamelessness. Yes, you can come now, and I'll teach each of you personally. While he was all excited, Lana appeared behind him, and the guy ran off, asking why he was being mistreated. At that moment, someone came with news. The orcs were already approaching the village, ready to attack. The creatures arrived earlier than planned. At the village gates, they drew near. A poor warrior is caught by surprise, getting cornered. With a sword in hand, she prepares to strike with all her might. Pew! The sword didn't even tickle, and the monster stared at her seriously. They were too weak compared to the orcs. She even started crying, saying she didn't want to be captured, but it was already too late. The monsters began entering the villages, capturing all of them. The leader said not to hurt any of the girls. They needed to capture them without damage, because they would make them their servants. I know what kind of servants those are. The girls tried to run, but couldn't, and one by one, they were captured. The leader, prince of the orc clan, was called Zul Sadar. He orders the servants to surrender once and for all. The girls get very scared, because they didn't have enough strength to fight them. From afar, our hero coordinates for them to shoot carefully. All the archers prepare, launching their arrows with extreme precision. They manage to hit all the targets, striking the monsters. But the leader manages to catch the arrow. The girls that were there use that opening to try to escape, and Luke orders another wave of arrows. They aim with precision and prepare an attack. However, the leader of the monsters is very strong and manages to stop the arrows with his arm. Looks like the elves have a commander now. The young man is there, hidden on the house roof. The leader is also with him, and she's scared. But Luke tells her to stay calm. That's because the attacks are working, and the monster prince is getting hit. The archers have great aim, and after several hits, the monster starts to scream. I knew it would work, especially with that aura technique I just taught them. Very confident. The protagonist says this battle is in the bag now. The beast screams in pain, and even says this is interesting. To Luke's surprise, the arrows are expelled from his body, and he hasn't taken any damage at all. He was just pretending. Right after, he uses a magic artifact from the demon race. After casting that spell, the elves start to feel very weak and even collapse. Seriously? That magical item is a vegetable? And there the elves are, tired and shaking. No elf can resist this spell. That ugly monster celebrates, saying it was a great idea to bring the artifact. This could be the end of the village, but the leader has a card up her sleeve. She won't let them be defeated so easily. Biting her finger, she uses her last strength to protect everyone. After rubbing her finger on the staff, she presents her technique, Divine Fireball. An extremely powerful sphere begins to glow on her staff. This would be her final technique to save her companions. It's a technique that requires a lot of mana. The monster starts panicking because that's a level 6 technique and very dangerous. But this orc is a joker, guys. It was all a prank. He says he can block that attack without even feeling a tickle. Besides, he says they should be ashamed, because, besides being weak, they're a disgrace to the world. He casts another spell that cancels the fireball, and on top of that, he hits the leader straight on, hurting her. Melancholically, she says goodbye to her companions, but Master Luke is there to catch her. With a runny nose, he says her appearance is stunning, and now he's going to take care of everything. This guy never misses a chance to act like a pervert. She gives a shy smile, saying this is his chance to escape safely. Hey, fairy sister, you remember what you promised earlier, right? You're still going to introduce me to those 3 servants and yourself, right? This guy isn't even worth a 1 real coin. With hope in her eyes, she says she'll trust his words. Trust me, girl. Daddy here knows what he's doing. That orc awaits his new enemy. He even mocks him, saying a scrawny, weak human won't even tickle him. I'm not just any human. I'm Yuke, the most handsome and charming guy in this world. Meanwhile, the creature laughs. If I defeat you, I'm taking 3 beautiful servants plus the leader for myself. That's 4 women. So you really think I'll let you beat me? That makes the monster furious, trying to take down our hero with a single strike. Luke raises 2 fingers and stops that powerful attack. It's impressive, causing a quake and energy waves. Yeah, buddy. Looks like you're the one who's not going to stand a chance. You know the rule, right? Big talkers get wrecked. And since the orc had talked a lot, he's trembling in fear now, knowing he'll be defeated. Even the village leader is surprised. Okay, he canceled the level 6 spell, and the boy held the monster's power with just 2 fingers. That's because the young man was using that paper doll spell. The only use of that little paper was to take all the damage from the person holding it. Right after, he opens the magic bag to grab a new item. Creating a flashy scene with lights, he pulls out his wooden sword. This is seen as a joke by the orc leader, but the boy is dead serious holding the sword. And he even says that even if the monster is at the nascent soul stage, he'll still get smacked. Without wasting time on small talk, he swings his sword diagonally, and with that, he slices the monster in half easily. Not just the monster, but the whole surrounding terrain. Bet you thought he was a weakling, huh? And the creature couldn't withstand it. He ended up going down like Vasco. Right after, the leader can't believe what she's seeing. Could that be a legendary sword? Actually, that sword is just a wooden artifact with spiritual energy. He made that sword when he fought his student, Xiao, and he did it just to mess with her. After losing, she kept saying that was ridiculous, because he was able to break one of her legendary swords. Luke only managed that because he put refinement into the sword, and he did it a whopping 999 times. That's why this sword became known as the common wooden sword level 9999. Luke even says his past arrogance ended up being useful, because he used that sword seriously, but that artifact had a unique enchantment and ended up breaking. Lana, who was hiding behind a tree, asked if the battle was over, and very charmingly, he said yes. Using all his charm and striking a funny pose, he says, I defeated the orc prince. Where are my maids? Hey Lana, would you like to be one of the chosen 3? At that moment, she felt a gigantic aura. Why do you look so serious? I just asked if you wanted to be my servant. So, do you accept? She was like that because that monster was standing behind him. The orc race had the berserker stage, triggered after receiving a fatal blow, and because of that, he ended up resurrecting for a short time. With that, our hero was caught by surprise and was defenseless. With the axe about to strike down our hero, the boy pushed Lana away to keep her safe. He didn't understand why he did that. He chose to save a stranger and sacrifice himself, even though he had just met her. However, that girl felt very familiar. It was like he had met her before. At that moment, the girl called him a fool and used a hand seal. With that, a gigantic lightning bolt struck the village, turning the monster into barbecue. Literally, the monster became barbecue. Hold on, I know that 5 Thunders technique. Don't tell me that. Yes, folks, this was one of his students. To be honest, she's my favorite. She was actually Shiava, disguised as an elf. The girl walked up to him. I'm not saving you or anything like that, you idiot. Xiao, is that really you? I knew you had transcended to the world of immortals. However, he didn't know she had come to the same place as him. Now his student was stronger, because he had lost all his cultivation, but she hadn't. Why are you calling me only Master? You can call me by my name. She stomped hard to try to intimidate him. Being with Master Luke made her very happy, especially now going to the world of immortals. However, now he had lost all his powers. Still, he tried to play it off, saying maybe he hadn't lost anything. Now that she had revealed herself, she was very angry, because she saw he was shameless and had been messing around with other girls. And so, she started chasing him, throwing lightning bolts. What's this story about having 3 servants in your room? Also, what's this about teaching them one-on-one? And another thing, what's this nonsense about cultivating with the village leader? Seems like the boy couldn't catch a break. Hold up, Xiao. How do you still have cultivation abilities? You were supposed to have lost your powers, just like me. The girl said he better not dare point a finger at her, and ended up hitting our boy with a lightning bolt. Later on, he was trying to recover, and his hair was all spiky. She said she came to this world about 3 months ago, and managed to train to reach this level of cultivation. Ah, so you changed your appearance using the water mirror flower? Yes, that's right. And I rewrote my consciousness using the butterfly dream. This butterfly ability made her consciousness completely change to pose as someone else. She had cast this spell, and it would only break in real danger or when meeting a strong cultivator. However, when she found our hero, the spell didn't break, and she was really mad, because now Master Luke was weak, much weaker than she was. Outside, the village chief thanked them both for their help. She had spent 3 months in that village cultivating and learning, and the most amazing part of all was that these 2 heroes ended up fulfilling the village prophecy. Xiao asked the chief to keep all of this a secret, and not to tell the others she was pretending to be an elf. Before leaving, our hero remembered something. He needed to search the treasures left behind by the orcs, because he wasn't very strong, so he needed artifacts, but there was nothing left. Remember when I said she turned him into barbecue? Come on, Xiao. You could have gone easier with the lightning. He found something glowing and, after searching, realized everything had turned to charcoal. However, he touched something that wasn't very pleasant. Seriously, folks, it wasn't pleasant at all. He even started kicking it, trying to bury it again. But his foot ended up touching another item. It could be a magical artifact. And after lifting his foot, he saw it was that legendary relic. And since that thing made the elves tired, he was already having naughty thoughts. So, what did you find? Nothing. I didn't find anything. He immediately hid the thing in his clothes, and even gave an excuse, saying he didn't find any items because she burned everything. After returning to the village chief, she asked if he had found anything. Then the guy lifted his shirt, showing the artifact, and she blushed right away. That's it. It worked. After a long night's sleep, they woke up the next day, saying goodbye to the village. The elves were sad because the handsome guy had left. So, leader, about those 3 maids, is that promise still standing? At that moment, he got smacked on the head. Xiao apologized and said she was already leaving. From afar, the elf was feeling emotional and shouted for them to wait. Holding our hero's hand, she ended up pulling him and even gave him a kiss on the cheek. In a romantic way, she thanked the traveling gentleman. That made Xiao very jealous. She said he should go back to the village and meet those 3 maids, and of course he promised he would return soon, which earned him a kick from his student. She even started chasing after him, saying the big guy was a shameless scoundrel. A little while later, help finally arrived in the village. From the sky, a large portal opened a glowing door. The elves already knew what it was and waited patiently. The leader even said her companions shouldn't panic, because it was the Vatican. A girl stepped out from it. She was a representative of the church and was there to save the village. The girls were surprised because that knight held a high rank. Even the leader couldn't believe such powerful people had come. She was the knight responsible for supervising the entire province of Ide. They say these warriors are of saint level. The girl said she received reports that orcs were coming to invade the village. One of the Vatican's employees said there was no trace of mana or demigod power. How could creatures be eliminated without leaving mana traces? The woman wanted to interrogate the village elves. However, the leader said it was better if they left. If a hero had defeated the creatures, he might have taken that magical artifact with him. However, it didn't seem like a registered hero did all that. Therefore, it was super important that they find out who defeated the orcs and took that relic. Besides that, they should bring this person back alive. The girl removed her hood and said she would complete the mission she was given. This was the retainer knight named Livia. The scene shifts to the outskirts of the city of Ide. Xiao said this world wasn't the world of immortals. The big guy had noticed that a long time ago. Besides, the aura of the place was different. The energy in this place was suited for cultivation, and the girl asked how he knew that. Actually, last night, he did a little training, and almost reached her power level. That made Xiao tense. as she realized her master was very talented. However, progressing now would be a bit more difficult. She said the big guy wasn't as great as he thought, trying to provoke him. Then he told a giant story of all his achievements. You've told that story over 800 times. Don't you think it's boring? There's not a single female cultivator here to think those little tales are cool. The girl crushed our poor hero's spirit. The magic system in this world was different. That's why there weren't any cultivators. She explained that what really existed were adventurers. An adventurer had weapons and skills to save cities in danger. They gained more strength when defeating monsters, and even got money for it. As their reputation grew, they received more missions and also more prestige. Usually, an adventurer who became a hero was very loved by women. They even had the freedom to search other people's houses. In other words, a hero was practically a king, with riches, powers, and women. As expected, Luke was totally enchanted by something so magnificent. I want to become a hero! I want to become a hero! Then we need to go to the Adventurers Guild. Let's go to the nearest city, which is called Ide. There, we can register. From a distance, that Vatican knight named Livia was observing them, and she was even doing that with her binoculars. Looks like, besides having great vision, she also had incredible hearing, and even managed to hear them saying they were going to the city of Ide. However, it was better to observe carefully, to find out if he was the hero who ended up defeating the Orc Prince. The scene shifts to the city of Ide, where they head to the Adventurers Guild. Upon arriving, the receptionist welcomes them, and he can't stop staring for even a second at the outfit she was wearing. The women in this world dress in an incredible way. A great universal knowledge is gained, and his world ended up expanding. I love this world. I love the clothes in this world. He even imagines his dear Xiao wearing an outfit like that. Why do you have that dumb look on your face? And why is your nose running? She realized what was going on and ended up punching him, leaving him buried in the ground. After registering, they took a mission to defeat a mystic vine. This vine liked to attack people by wrapping around them. And of course, Luke started thinking nonsense. In his imagination, that vine would trap his student Xiao, leaving her vulnerable. So, he accepted the mission, thinking it would be amazing. However, reality was completely different. The real world was much sadder and colder, and the one who ended up being captured was him. Save me, Xiao! Help! The girl threw a lightning bolt and finished everything. And so, the mission was completed. From afar, Livia was observing the whole scene, and with that, she wrote down all the information she saw in her book. The young woman seemed very powerful. As for the boy, he was a scrawny guy who thought too highly of himself. The receptionist said the newbies were very effective, and so she would give them a harder mission. Hold on, lady. Let me choose it myself. He saw a little creature that seemed very cute and weak, and picked it as his mission to defeat. This little creature looks weak, so I should defeat it by myself. I don't want to keep getting zapped in the head. And so, he sets off all excited. He would like to defeat the monster without his student's help. However, he notices she was screaming in the background. She seemed terrified and didn't want to continue the mission. That's because that little creature was a slime. They had never seen a creature as cute as that one, and the girl was feeling sorry. They had never seen a monster like that in their world, so he didn't know if she was just scared or feeling pity. He wasn't sure. Hey, Xiao, you're really cute, you know that? He was making a love confession to his student, and started complimenting her, saying she looked really cute when receiving compliments, and even when acting like a tsundere trying to zap him with lightning. And above all, she was very cute when trying to hide her embarrassment. Pointing at the slime, he asks, "How can a little creature like that dare to make my student cry?" Apparently, he would have to defeat that little creature on his own. He was doing it to look cool. However, the slime began to activate its mimic skill, and noticing those movements, he realized the creature was trying to copy his form. At that moment, the blue slime started forming and slowly began to transform. Not into Luke, but into Xiao. That left the guy paralyzed. That's because when slimes took someone's form, they couldn't copy their clothes. That's right, you're thinking it. He could see everything on the slime, and even said the Xiao copy was perfect. The guy couldn't stop staring. He even gave it a thumbs up of approval. Right after, his nose started dripping like crazy, and he collapsed without being able to fight. The girl was actually scared of the slime. It wasn't disgust or pity, and with that, she screamed, casting her lightning magic and hitting that poor creature. And once again, she made another barbecue. From afar, Livia was already taking notes. She wrote that the girl was afraid of slimes, but she had a lot of power. The boy, on the other hand, was just a weakling and shameless. The woman could not be underestimated, and even wondered what she was doing beside such a weak man. On the way back to the Adventurers Guild, our hero had spiky hair since he had taken another shock. I need to get stronger so I can fight alone. He had a tactic to avoid getting shocked by his student. That's because he had stored that relic. On a beautiful morning, he was going to put his plan into action. He wanted to study those 2 spells Xiao had used to transform back then. However, the girl was a bit suspicious and said he could study alone. It's just that, since you're stronger than me, I thought maybe you could help me. When he called her senpai, as a way of showing respect, the girl got all touched, saying she couldn't refuse a request like that. It was like her master was now humbling himself before her, and that got the girl excited. Little did the poor thing know she was falling into a trap. So innocently, she used her spell to transform into an elf. She started giving advice on how to use that kind of spell, and the guy stayed there, pretending to pay attention to learn a bit more. While faking it, he quickly pulled out that magical relic. She knew exactly what that did, since it was a sacred treasure of the orcs. And with that, she got all weakened, with flushed cheeks. He used the artifact to make her promise 3 things. First, she wasn't allowed to get mad at him anymore. Second, she couldn't zap him with lightning anymore. And third, to stop calling him Master and start calling him Big Brother Luke. That's because he wanted a more intimate relationship with her and didn't want her treating him like just a simple master. Besides, little girl, you've been so arrogant these past few days, just because you're stronger than me. And I bet you didn't expect me to have an item like this hidden with me. Now you're in my hands, little girl. I'm not gonna let you keep humiliating me anymore. However, while he was showing off, he dropped his artifact, and it broke in half. He was screwed, because if she found out he had lost the item's magic, she would definitely get revenge on him. So the guy quickly crouches and hides the broken item. There, I already taught you a lesson. Now you can go back and rest. He slams the door and leaves, even hurrying away so she doesn't find out anything. The girl finds that very strange. And the worst part is, even not being an elf, she was affected by that item. She even asks why he simply didn't take advantage of her to perform dual cultivation, since that's what she wanted. Later that night, our hero was out hunting to get stronger. He defeated several monsters and thus completed the missions. He had defeated a pseudo-legendary demon that was extremely strong. That meant he could now use some of the magics from the nascent soul realm. However, that still wasn't strong enough, and he would need to reach the heavenly realm quickly. If he didn't, he would be in danger. He comes out of the cave and, outside, Livia was spying on him. She realized the guy had defeated the strong monster. It was very strange that he was completing missions without the girl's help. However, at that moment, she ends up hearing a voice. When she turns around, she realizes it was someone dangerous. She said she was the Knight of Holy Faith, but the one who was there was a succubus. And as expected, succubus demons don't care much about the church. She keeps threatening the little girl. Get lost, demon. I'm working here, I don't have time for you. Looks like you didn't understand the situation, little knight. She said this Vatican warrior should be eliminated. It was a serious sin to speak that way to a church knight. However, the demon didn't care and went after her with her hammer. She didn't forgive anyone who offended her brother's sect and charged at the knight. Livia manages to block using a defense spell and immediately draws her weapons. She didn't understand who this brother was that the girl said she had offended. However, the demon was very strong, and she couldn't take her attack. Little knight, you can't stop me! Then Livia uses a holy water invocation and manages to seal the demon's hammer. Right after, she tries to destroy the weapon by throwing it far away. Now, that succubus was unarmed and vulnerable. With sword in hand, she charges at her enemy. However, the demon also had a card up her sleeve, and after using a hand seal, she sealed Livia's weapon, trapping the sword in a magic cube. The battle wasn't just about strength, but also strategy, and the girl even started making jokes, saying the Vatican Knight wasn't all that. Livia asks what kind of spells those were, and the demon says she wasn't from this world, but from the Man sect. You've already figured out who this girl is, right? And she activates her powers, launching the knight far away. The poor girl ends up falling off that cliff, and even using holy water, she couldn't soften the whole fall. The impact on the ground is very strong, leaving her unconscious. From up above, that demon keeps making fun. She needed to drain magical energy to satisfy her hunger, and even said that this fight wasn't enough, she'd need to drain even more energy. However, she was without her hammer and started looking around for it. Back at the Adventurers Guild, the receptionist had brought a special edition. In the region, there was a succubus using forbidden magic, draining energy from innocent girls. After showing the mission flyer to Xiao, she said the reward was high. Upon seeing that drawing of the succubus, Xiao recognized her instantly and realized it was her sister, Yu Yun. Yeah, my friend. All 5 girls are scattered around this world, and she even grabbed the flyer, saying she would accept the mission. Later, our hero comes across this girl and notices that she was very beautiful. This world is so amazing that even girls literally fall from the sky. She reminds me a bit of Yu Yun, but my Luna is a bit curvier. The guy checks if she was still breathing and notices that her meridians were broken. So he puts her on his back and takes her into the cave. After a few moments, she starts sweating a lot. That's because he was trying to heal her with his magic. She even starts to feel pain. When she opens her eyes, the girl asks who was there. She realizes it was a man performing a healing spell, and Luke notices that the girl had finally woken up. That situation was very embarrassing. So he explained that while performing the healing spell, the cotton fabrics might catch fire. That's why he ended up removing the fabrics. But it wasn't for her to think bad things about him. Of course, the girl started screaming in shock, right? Who wouldn't be scared? She even ran off, saying there was a shameless guy in there. When she got outside, she noticed it was cold and even started sneezing. It's true, I'm not wearing clothes, and ended up running back into the cave. Where are my clothes? Where did you put them? Well, to be honest, when I touched them, they just ripped apart. Sure. She started calling him a womanizer, punching his arm. However, he said he was only doing it to save her. Besides, when you had your arms raised, the view was even wider. That made her blush deeply with embarrassment. And she even turned away, saying he was a wicked villain. She said her clothes were very expensive, so he opened his magic arsenal and took out 2 pieces of clothing, telling her to choose. If you don't like either of these, I have more clothes here, don't worry. Then he grabs 2 more options. However, she was crying a lot because the situation was so embarrassing. The guy turns away and tells her to do whatever she wants, but she tells him to wait, and with that, ends up choosing the pink outfit. After a while, he's outside asking if she had already changed. Since she wasn't used to those clothes, she said it was a bit difficult. He didn't miss the chance and offered to help her. She refused. After a few moments, he asked again, shouting loudly. The girl asked what he wanted to do with her. My dear, I just found you lying on the ground and decided to help you by healing you. A few minutes pass, and she still hadn't finished. Then, after a few brief seconds, she says she finished dressing. He decides to go back into the cave, already imagining what she might look like. And when he gets there, the scene is magnificent. She was embarrassed, saying she wasn't used to those clothes, and that he had some odd tastes. But those clothes weren't his, and the guy starts explaining himself. Actually, he was just there to heal her, because her meridians were damaged. The girl said that Knights of Holy Faith have divine blessing and protection. She couldn't believe she was in serious condition. Then he starts counting. 3, 2, 1. At that moment, Livia starts to feel a terrible pain. That's because her meridians were damaged. All he wanted to do was heal her and then go home. The girl asks him to swear that's all he's going to do. With few options, he ends up swearing to her, saying he has no bad intentions. Besides, if he had wanted to do anything bad, he would have already done it. And if by chance she didn't want to be healed by him, the boy would simply leave. However, she knew she was injured and said that, for the Holy Faith Knights, religious discipline was very strict. He didn't understand what she was trying to say. In other words, it would be a very serious sin, and she couldn't, in good conscience, reveal herself to him. That was something only married people could do. That's why she was committing herself to be his wife. She was promising to be his and only his for the rest of her life. The scene shifts back to the city of Aid, and someone ends up entering through a window. It was that very succubus, Yu Yun. She was draining energy. When she came to this world, she took advantage to feed the curse in her stomach, and she did that by stealing energy from innocent girls. Now that she had satisfied her hunger, she needed to return to the forest and deal with that church knight. Meanwhile, Xiao was worried because the master hadn't returned yet, and Yu Yun was still in the city. So the two of them use a location spell at the same time, one to locate Livia, and the other to locate Luke. And so, they managed to sense his location and knew exactly where to go. The knight said that would be a very great sin, so she couldn't just take off her dress. That would be a very serious sin. That's why she was committing to become his. And with flushed cheeks and eyes full of tears, she said she now belonged to our hero. He finds that amazing and, at the same time, feels confused. But he starts to think about something important. The girl was anxious, waiting for our hero's answer. Would he accept or not? Then that rascal says everything's fine and starts to give a very important explanation. But Livia wasn't understanding anything, because she was nervous. The only thing she could think of was that now she would become this boy's wife. Right after, he asks her to turn around. Does it really have to be in this position? Of course it does. So she turns her back to him. Luke places his hands on her shoulders and says it might hurt a little at first, but that she'll get used to it. This poor girl already thinks it's going to be very painful, but that's not really what happens. The only thing he was doing was massaging her shoulders, and she asks about the clothes. You didn't hear anything I just said, did you? These clothes aren't cotton, so there was no need to take them off. She hadn't understood a single word, since she was anxious. Seconds ago, he had said that this outfit was lighter and wouldn't catch fire like the cotton one. Basically, she offered herself as his wife for nothing. The girl even regrets it because she hadn't listened to the explanations and even lets out a loud scream asking for forgiveness. Soon after, he continues the massage, aiming to reorganize her meridians. Since she was a knight, a daughter of God, she should keep her promises. She asks, "Who is this son of God?" Bringing her hands together in a respectful tone, she explains that the Son of God is the Pope, the master of the Holy Faith. They lived and fought in his name. Since our protagonist came from the Asia region, believing in God was something very strange. But in her case, not believing in God was considered a sin. He even smiles, saying that's very unusual. Then a flashback comes to his mind, of his master from the Mim sect. Her name was Luchi. Basically, cultivators didn't believe in deities, guys, but they believed that everyone could become immortal. If you're enjoying the video, leave a like and a comment. It's very important, seriously guys. It costs nothing and will help the channel. Right after, he gets curious to know the rewards of being a church knight. He imagined he would receive a lot of riches, but the girl says that material things are meaningless. Okay, but you get beautiful women or handsome men, right? Not that either. Hold on, you don't even get money? A little. Embarrassed, the knight says she doesn't get money. So at least magical equipment? Are you going to tell me you don't get magical equipment? To get that equipment, just serving the church wasn't enough. You needed to be a knight. And since Asians are very materialistic, he keeps saying that this god isn't cool at all. Sometime later, he had already finished the healing and asks if she's feeling better. The girl, cheeks still flushed, confirms, saying she feels fine. He had used his power to reorganize her meridians. In a very cute way, the girl ends up thanking him. But there was no need to thank him. Helping others was something simple that he should do. But, as we know, this guy here always has a second intention. So he ends up using his hypnosis power on her. It was a way for him to find out information about the girl, and she is quickly hypnotized, becoming totally under control. That was possible because he put his energy into the girl's body. Now he needed to know a bit more about her. Using hypnosis, it would be safer to get truthful answers. Investigating through that magic would be much easier. The scene changes to a nearby location. We see that Yuyun was outside the cave. Since the church knight wasn't down there, she suspected that she had entered inside the cave. Who was also following the energy of someone was Xiao. She even got angry, saying that her shameless master must have been doing something wrong. And there was the big guy extracting information from the knight. He needed to investigate why she was lying outside, so he asks what she was doing there when he found her. The girl says she was just passing through. Then he snaps his fingers and orders her to tell the truth. With a sigh, she begins to answer. She says the words magic relic and orcs. The guy already understood what was happening. She gave more information, saying that her master made her look for whoever had stolen the orcs' relics. The guy asks, who was her master? Even without controlling herself, Livia was giving all the true answers. She ends up saying that her master was the knight Azuri, who served the Pope. Getting even closer, he asks how she managed to find him. The girl gives more information, saying that Lord Azuri wants her to take the boy. She even invites him. She gets worried because she had trusted the girl and she was there trying to capture him. Nodding to confirm, she said the intention was to extract information from him. So he immediately gives a tap and ends up giving a light tap. I can't believe I trusted you. I was just trying to save that village. The girl asks him to stop tapping. However, he says this is a punishment. He was treating her like a child, saying that's what you do when children don't respect others. When he finishes, the girl complains, saying it hurt and that she wasn't to blame. Luke knew she was only following orders. He wanted to know why this artifact was so important. In fact, this relic was involved in the matters of the Holy Church's artifact hunters. Besides, there was something important. Using all her strength, she manages to resist. The guy realizes she had a lot of willpower to hold back the words. At that moment, he has an evil thought. He thought about taking advantage of the situation, if you know what I mean. In an evil way, he asks what she admires in a man. That makes the girl think, and she says she had never been with a man before, so she didn't know how to answer. She says her heart was beating with a very pleasant feeling. He even said she had incredible charm. Right after, he asks for the girl's measurements. She holds back as much as possible to not say, "What was that? I didn't hear. Could you repeat?" Then she ends up saying her measurements are XX. At that moment, she grabs our hero's clothes and tells him to stop using that spiritual magic, because she was a knight and wouldn't tolerate this kind of dishonor anymore. The guy realizes she had used all her strength to break that assimilation. As she was pulling him, the guy ended up losing balance. Then comes that classic scene you all know must happen. He ends up falling on top of her. However, someone arrived at that place. It was precisely his student Yun Yum. Comment here for us, which of these WFUs you think our hero should choose. The girl asks what her brother was doing and if he was busy. In that situation, it was too confusing for him to explain. Upon seeing those horns and pointed ears, he immediately realized it was his student Yuyun N. She gives a smile, asking if he was playing with her feelings. Besides, that girl was wearing his clothes. Our protagonist even jumps back. Listen here, Yuyun N. It's not what you think, okay? I believe she didn't believe at all, and immediately launched a spell called 1,000 Space Swords. The big guy realizes that power was very strong, so he needed to block it using the Abyss Dragon. She didn't expect her master to have gotten so strong in such a short time. In a jealous way, she asks what he was doing with that girl. After being without her master for so long, she started valuing his presence even more. Well, Yoon, we've known each other since childhood. You know I wouldn't do anything wrong to that girl, right? However, she didn't believe much and intensified her attack magic. The guy realizes this was going to be bad. In a few moments, the big guy was already surrounded. She asks if he wasn't being too cheeky for asking those questions to her. Then she uses the spell of 1,000 space prisons, and even says that shameless guy wasn't afraid of consequences. She keeps mocking him, saying he wouldn't be able to escape that magic. However, as we all know, our hero was angry. He manages to break the spell and immediately charges at the girl with his 2 jade swords. Even if they were at a higher cultivation level, he still had more experience. Breaking everything around him, he subdues the girl, leaving her embarrassed on the ground. That was just a test. She wanted to see if her master was still powerful. Surrendering to him, the girl said she fully surrenders to our hero. The guy keeps telling her not to cause problems, giving a sly smile. She said she understood everything, and tries to surprise him with a spell from the side. The guy wasn't expecting that. Since his defense was open, she hit him in the stomach, throwing the poor guy far away. She had crossed the 4 realms. However, the young master was low in cultivation, and he even threatens our hero by climbing on top of him. The church knight, watching all that, was horrified. However, the demon snapped her fingers, casting a prison on Livia, and she even tells that girl not to be an obstacle. While trapped, she began hitting the barrier to free herself. All her innocence was about to be ruined. She would see those 2 kiss right in front of her. Slowly, she started to get embarrassed, and her face turned completely red. Then, Yoon had drained energy from our hero. She was all happy, saying Luke's energy was very large. The young master's spiritual vitality was abundant. All right, Noonam, now you can free me. However, she said that wouldn't be possible. She wanted to drain even more of his energy, and said that the fun was just beginning. The guy, being shameless, blushed, and the poor church knight was having the most exciting day of her life. However, someone had arrived there, and it was exactly Xiao. Livia couldn't believe another girl had arrived. There was a heroine dying of jealousy. She looked at Livia, wondering what the hell a girl was doing trapped there. Then, she looked at her sister, Yuyun N, realizing it was a trap from her. I was already suspecting the young master was in trouble. You're worthless, Master Luke. Let me explain. Xiao wasn't doing anything wrong, I swear. In a provocative way, Yoon said it had been a long time since she had seen her sister. The girl started suspecting that the plan to trap the young master at the sect headquarters was all her idea. However, the girl said it was a coincidence, that she didn't imagine she would come to this world. Oh, really? Then why were you taking advantage of young Master Luke there? To make the situation worse, the girl Livia, who was trapped, was wearing Yuyun's clothes trying to explain herself. Our protagonist said it was all a misunderstanding. The girls got mad, telling him to shut up. Deep down, the church knight was watching the scene. Noticing everyone was distracted, she bit her finger. She was about to cast a summoning spell. She knew she needed to summon her chief. While the fight went on, Yoon said she would already be with the young master if the other sisters hadn't interrupted. Moreover, if no other student had gotten in the way of her relationship with the young master, they could already have had many children. Logically, she was saying that just to annoy her sister and Xiao. On the other hand, she said she had something she had never told the other sisters before. Actually, the one who gave the first kiss to Master Luke was her. The demon immediately got angry, asking her brother if that was true. Actually, it was just a misunderstanding. He had slipped on a banana peel and fallen on top of her. However, the demon girl was going to turn the tables. She said it could be that Xiao gave the first kiss. However, she went further and said she bathed with our hero for several days. That made Xiao furious, asking Master Luke what he was up to. However, the big guy said that was when they were babies playing inside a bucket. Is that true, Unam? She gets a little embarrassed, saying yes. Basically, that was a dirty trick just to cause jealousy. And so a fight begins to see who went further with the big guy. The poor guy was just trying to stop the fight, and they turned to him again, telling him to shut up. It seemed the two were destined to exchange punches. because they were the two most jealous sisters. Without delay, Yuyun prepared her magic. Xiao didn't stay behind and summoned her spells. Comment below who you think will win, and also which one is your favorite of the two. Meanwhile, the church knight Livia said she finally finished. She made a summoning drawing and activated the magic seal. A little far from there, we see a couple in the forest. They had been caught by surprise by the holy church knight. She was looking for people who kidnapped elderly people. The blue-haired girl said the old lady had been abandoned by her own son. She had only saved the elderly woman and explained that she was only doing good things. She hadn't done anything wrong. She wasn't a sinner. However, as you can guess, the church people didn't care. She immediately cast a holy water spell. The spell hit the girl's arm, burning it badly. Holy water identified impurity in people. The guy asks how his wife was doing. Noticing that the holy water hurt that woman, the knight started calling her a heretic. That was because the girl was a simple necromancer. She even started crying, saying she hadn't done anything wrong. All she wanted was to live in peace with her husband in the mountains. They hugged, saying they loved each other, while the woman apologized, saying it looked like she used forbidden magic. The man said he only wanted to live in peace, away from the church. However, those knights always appeared to torment them. Feeling cornered, the husband decided to use his magic to protect his wife. Thus, he summoned the great dragon of the abyss. This power made the whole ground break. The goal was to buy time or even defeat the knight. That's why he was using his strongest power. The dragon's attack passed by the knight. It was a black dragon of the abyss. However, this knight was also tough and immediately prepared for the counterattack. She calmly awaited the dragon's arrival. Meanwhile, the man started celebrating, imagining he would defeat this church representative. The guy even says he tried to be a good person, but the church forced him to do evil things. With that, he commands his black dragon to release a burst of fire against that girl. Azuri had confirmed the heresy, since that master was a legendary necromancer. However, that was not a simple knight. She was Azuri, the Pope's knight. The guy was already in shock. He didn't know it was someone with such a high level. Using the absolute celestial balance attack, she finishes the dragon. The attack was so powerful that the creature split in half. Right after, it shattered into many fragments. The man stands in front of his wife to protect her. However, without success, he ends up being hit by that power. At that moment, she received the call from her knight Livia. From inside the cave, it was time for the next trial. She says goodbye to the necromancer couple. That seal's light ends up shining. An intense light falls from the sky. A gigantic portal opens. There, she comes out from inside. She still says that her companion had done a good job. The green-haired girl gets all excited because she received help. Meanwhile, our hero was having his cheeks pinched by the students. It was much more dangerous for him to be with them than to be caught by the church. However, our hero's opinion was about to change. The Pope's knight had arrived. That girl really was badass. The poor boy didn't even know how to react. He knew very well what it was about, since he had interrogated Livia. He ended up standing in front of his students. To his surprise, that tattletale ended up saying that it was this boy who had the relic. She even accused our hero of other things that are not good to mention here in the video. But it was enough for his students to be horrified upon hearing those reports. The knight remained silent. Right after, she said he was being arrested and would be taken to trial. But of course, the two girls wouldn't allow it. They even asked what that shorty was trying to say. With a serious look, the demon girl said that Big Brother belonged to her. Did you hear what she said? She wants to take our master away. That's exactly what I heard too. Does she think we will let it happen? The two stepped forward to protect our hero. They even comment that she would be a worthy opponent. The legendary knights of the Holy Pope class were extremely powerful. Yum confirms, saying that if the two joined forces, they wouldn't match that girl's power. But still, they would fight. They would do it to protect the young master. If you like a manga full of fights, comment Part 2, so we bring a series of this work. There are many chapters. The little girl stared at those two. Of course, the students wouldn't allow their master to be taken to trial. That knight realized she would have to fight. The girls were deciding who would advance first. Already activating her spell, Xiao said she would go first. A gigantic lightning bolt falls from the sky, hitting that cave and causing a hole on top. That hit the ground hard, and the whole terrain began to crumble. The church's knight realized these two were strong too. Since cultivation didn't exist in this world, she started to analyze what energy that was. That lightning was again directed at Azuri. However, the little girl was also badass. With the wave of her hands, she manages to block that attack with her sword. She charges forward, cutting everything. The cave is hit by those blades. Now, everything was collapsing. Livia, together with Yuyun, realized the stones were going to fall on them. Even our hero said that was very dangerous. Thus, the whole cave began to collapse. The tattletale girl ended up being saved by Yu-Yun. Throwing her to the ground, the succubus makes a serious face. Meanwhile, she feels embarrassed for being rescued and even apologizes, stammering. However, the demon said she didn't do that to save her. Actually, she didn't want her clothes to be torn. She even threw a coat over her to cover the girl. Our hero moved closer to the fight. Logically, he was worried about Xiao. The Pope's knight was very powerful. On top of that, his Luna hadn't recovered full power. That's why that battle would be very risky for them. They say the Pope's knights have the holy class, but that seems to be a lie. The little girl keeps saying they are nothing more than pseudo-legendaries, or not even that. Xiao, in response, says that's none of her business. But, in short, she would do everything to protect her master. She intensifies the spell invocation, saying she is willing to do anything for that idiot. In the name of the Yanhee sect, she wouldn't let that girl even get near the master. Meanwhile, the church's representative, Azuri, was not understanding anything. How were they interfering with the church's work? They would also be considered heretics. In other words, they would also be enemies of the Pope. Azuri still says these two girls are arrogant for thinking they can confront God's representative. As I explained before, cultivators mostly don't believe much in God, but in the power of immortals. So, she says this is nonsense, and that she will push beyond her limits to defeat her, even if she's a lower level. It was common for cultivators to break their own limits. The knight prepares her sword to face that attack head-on. The two magics collide. They are like in a Dragon Ball Z fight. However, the knight was even stronger and manages to resize her other sword. The succubus realized this was dangerous. Two swords would open gaps. So, she needed to take care of that attack coming from behind. She uses her golden plates to reach up there. When she was about to be hit by those blades, Yu-Yun appeared to help her. The girl manages to block that spell. Right after, she uses her plates to make a new barrier. That whole defense is formed. The attack of 1,000 swords hits the magic, but in a very easy way. The knight Azuri managed to break the protection. Yum did not expect that. Then, she already jumped back, trying to dodge. And, grabbing her sister, she manages to protect her. However, she ends up being hit in the back. Our hero watches all that without understanding anything. He watches all that without being able to do anything. With the cut of the two blades, they end up falling from the sky and crashing on the ground, raising dust. The younger sister put herself in front to protect Xiao. She even told her sister not to worry about that and focus on the battle. Xiao says her little sister was an idiot. She prepares a healing spell. But this was not a Japanese anime. Azuri would not give them time to recover. So, the girl returned to finish the two. However, our hero put a stop to it. I advise you not to take another step. This one is a badass. You don't understand the consequences of harming my people. The church representative said it was only for him to deliver the relic and go to the place for trial. It's a shame I'm not a master who follows orders. Opening his arsenal, he prepares to take a magic pill. This was a unique item, with extraordinary effect. Upon biting that pill, his eyes begin to shine with an intense color. The transformation gives chills. The knight, who was full of confidence, starts trembling with fear. That power was even at or better than the Pope's own level. As he steps forward, the ground begins to tremble. Our protagonist reached a level never before seen in this world. He says he finally returned to the realm of immortals. That power was overwhelming. It was as if the defenseless little girl was facing the most powerful demon in the entire universe. Her mind went silent. It seemed her body would melt from so much fear. She trembled. Meanwhile, our hero approached. Holding a bottle, he said she was very bold. After opening that bottle, he ended up throwing water on her face. She didn't understand why he did that. When she realized it, our hero had already fled a long time ago. The scene returns to the city of Ide. After they used the teleportation spell, they did that to escape the place. The two were hugging our protagonist, all happy. Then, Xiao slaps our protagonist's face, telling him to let her go. He ended up just hugging Yu-Yun. However, she got embarrassed. Yu-Yun also slaps him. Even you, Yu-Yun? Are you mad at me? Then, the girls call him an idiot and ask if he really reached the realm of immortals. Of course not. Do you think it would be that easy? So, how did you manage to trick her? He explains that that is the fake brave pill. Fake brave pills only give a miraculous sensation that the person has an absurd power. That pill was created by Yuzo, who is the little poison girl. Our protagonist even mentions he didn't know that pill would be useful, and thanks the girl. So, it was basically agreed. Not even combining the power of the three could they defeat the church's knight. The realm of the two girls was even stronger than our heroes, but even so, it wouldn't be possible. Besides, that girl, Azuri, had a peculiar weapon. The question was, what was wrong with her weapon? Then, he decides to investigate the wound that was on Yu-Yun's back. They notice that Yu-Yun took the precise blow to the back, but the wound was not so serious. Our protagonist deduces that his student was using the hidden blade spine. Basically, it was a spell that could repel all damage. She even confirmed it, saying that was exactly it. It was because of that protection spell that she didn't die. And that was why she was known as a master of defensive formation. She had several defense techniques, and that's why she survived. Xiao doesn't understand what that has to do with that priestess's weapon. He meant that that girl couldn't identify that protection magic. She ended up hitting that defense. The demon girl confirms, saying that a very experienced fighter could identify that protective barrier called hidden spine. In other words, it could only be one thing. That girl was not invincible and did not have the power of laws. That so-called power of laws was something that ignored those defense rules, like the hidden spine. Xiao thinks maybe that's because in this world there is no cultivation, but they use another form of magic. That is exactly what Master Luke was thinking. He saw those two swords of the night and had never seen weapons working in that way. However, those swords were very similar to the ones Master Luke used. It seemed he had discovered something. She could use one sword to block attacks, and with the other, she opened a gap to attack. That was an extremely difficult technique to use. That's why it was very difficult to fight against her. Basically, she always defended one attack and attacked again from behind. If this girl lived in our hero's world, she would definitely have the Saint class. Since our hero had the ability to talk with swords, he discovered what the secret power of that blade was. However, he didn't explain it right away to his students, since they wouldn't understand. But to defeat that knight, he would need to enter a domain realm. After gaining that power, he would fight that knight alone. He wouldn't need the help of the two girls. They complain, saying they would like to participate in that attack, and that they wouldn't have enough time to practice cultivation and reach that level. However, our hero laughs, saying there is always a card up the sleeve. He would use the time they had, as they were suppressing the energy to be able to train. They would only be able to suppress the power for about 12 more hours, and that would be the time necessary for him to break through the nascent soul realm. The scene returns to the forest. We see that Azuri was a little upset. Actually, she had a dirty face because he had thrown that liquid on her. The little girl ends up cleaning herself. Right after, Livia asks how she was. She was fine, even after having suffered a dishonor. That was unbearable, she says. Livia noticed that her master was feeling embarrassed. She didn't even look back to talk to her. At that moment, she extended her hand. Actually, she was not looking at Livia because she couldn't see the girl. Her face was dirty. She stayed there, caressing the air. Right after, they decide that they need to examine the place first. They want to discover more about the energy those opponents used. Livia says it's okay, that she will do it. While walking, poor Azuri ends up hitting her face on a tree. She complains, saying that the liquid our hero threw on her was blocking her vision. Then, the scene goes back to where our hero and the girls were sleeping. They only had 10 more hours to cultivate. However, breaking from the level he was to the nascent soul realm was basically impossible. There was only one way he could do it. Yoon was managing to improve her cultivation skill by draining energy from other girls. Xiao gets mad, asking if a succubus doesn't drain energy from men instead of women. Hugging our hero, Yoon said she couldn't betray her big brother. That's why she was sucking energy from other girls. Even though it wasn't very good, it still worked. The protagonist feels embarrassed, asking if she was really doing that to other women. Xiao runs after the protagonist because he was thinking nonsense. Later, they decide what the training method will be. He had taken several slaps from Xiao and said he knew a right way. The love sect had a technique to raise cultivation very fast, and you can already imagine what it is. Hearing this idea, the two girls blush. When two cultivators exchanged energy, the energies added up. That way, they could advance in cultivation. Xiao says that technique is very low and that she wouldn't be able to do it, but this was a matter of life or death. Our hero says transferring energy based on cultivation is a viable technique. As expected, the succubus gets excited and says she can't wait to practice double cultivation. However, the hero explains that symphonization, which is this technique, requires a depth mechanism. That's why he ended up inventing a new technique. He did it mixing concepts from the love sect, and with that, created the pearl dive technique. Xiao doesn't understand anything but already imagines what he means by that. All the energy that exists in the world is based on yin and yang. That is, positive or negative ability, good and evil, masculine or feminine. Everything exists in this duality. Wait, are you saying we need to exchange our body energy intimately? Yoon goes and whispers in the girl's ear, explaining that's exactly it. She turns all red, dying of embarrassment. That's what she wanted to do with our hero all along. But when the opportunity came, she got shy. She says our protagonist is a little rascal. Meanwhile, Yoon was liking the idea, and she even teases her sister, saying she waited her whole life for this day, and when it finally came, she wanted to back down. She even provokes her sister, saying she wouldn't agree to something so embarrassing. However, they couldn't keep waiting for that night to come and defeat them. In a very romantic way, Yu-yun touches our hero's body. She says she is willing to practice the pearl dive technique. As for her sister Xiao, she could stay outside, and if she needed to cultivate once, twice, 3 or 50 times, she was available. Of course, Xiao didn't like hearing that at all. She touches her sister's shoulder, dying of anger, says that Yu-yun is trying to stand out because of her beauty. Then, they start arguing to see who would get our hero first. Oh yeah? You think I can't handle it just because I'm shyer than you? Oh, so Sister Xiao is quite skilled in these naughty things. That makes the girl die of embarrassment. She says she knows about these things because she is a master of the celestial sect, and that she ended up reading certain literature books that talked about double cultivation. That's why she learned. Then Yoon teases her sister even more, asking if she only knows in theory, or if she also knows in practice. Xiao turns all red, saying she won't answer that, then says she knows nothing in practice, only in theory. To tease even more, Yu-yun asks if she already tried alone. Almost melting from embarrassment, Xiao says she didn't try either. Right after, she realizes what the girl meant, asks if she already did it before. As we know, Yu-yun is a naughty little succubus. She says she already practiced. That shocks both our hero and Xiao. She continues giving more details on how it works. Xiao is kind of frozen, not knowing how to react. Yoon takes advantage of this gap to provoke her sister, making her angrier. In her defense, Yu-yun says she is a succubus, and that they are always more advanced, so to speak. At that moment, our protagonist stays there watching the scene of the two girls fighting. Xiao says she will give much more energy to the hero, says she will do better than her sister. The succubus counters, saying she has much more experience. Then, she would be better. That way, the two start arguing to see who would do better cultivating with our protagonist. I will win over Big Brother first. I will win over Big Brother soon, and won't let you have him. Yoon wanted to be the first to be with Luke, but Xiao wanted that too. They start arguing fiercely. Our hero, a bit shaky, wants to say something. He says the three could unite together. They punch him in the face, and say that wouldn't happen even in the boy's dreams. But that wasn't really what he wanted to say. Both Xiao and Yoon immediately take off their shoes, throw them at the shameless guy's face, then start stepping on the poor guy's head. He keeps asking them to stop. He just wanted to explain himself. The girls decide to give him a second chance to explain everything. The goal of everyone is to reach an advancement in cultivation power. Yes, we know. Then, he continues saying the immediate issue is that if he did double cultivation with just one person, he might end up dying. And that's not what they would want to happen. They don't really understand why he said he would die. So, the guy tries to stand up. After cleaning his clothes, he goes to give a deep explanation. He says he was born with 2 innate types of constitution. Born with the sword constitution, which was a very overpowered power, and also with the Tal embryo, which is the primordial origin of life. They all already knew that he was born with these 2 constitutions, and even gave an explanation, saying they know very well how the sword constitution and the tail constitution work. Most people are also born with 2 constitutions. However, in our protagonist's case, something different happened. These 2 constitutions ended up becoming dominant constitutions. That was information they didn't know. That meant his body was divided in half sword innate constitution, and the other half life constitution. If he practiced double cultivation with one girl, he could mess up all those constitutions, making his body explode. If the body exploded, logically, he would lose his life. When they heard that explanation, they were shocked. They realized it was serious. It really made a lot of sense, and it wasn't something that could be healed with a spell. That is, if a different energy entered our hero's body, his body would destabilize. The shameless guy gets all happy. Looks like they finally understood. Even if he practiced triple cultivation, it wasn't guaranteed that his cultivation would improve. Still, Yoon said it was better to try. The shameless guy stays there with a long nose, saying they are right. He wasn't trying to take advantage of them. He just wanted to save both by improving cultivation. All 3 were geniuses in Tal cultivation. However, the nascent soul and the rising nascent soul were not comparable to Tal energy. Xiao already runs and kicks him in the face. She starts doubting, saying he's only saying that to get close to both of them at the same time. The poor guy has his forehead all hurt. He assures he wasn't trying to trick them, and that something dangerous could really happen if he cultivated with only one. Then, he raises his hands up and promises he isn't lying. He is telling the truth. He just wants to save the lives of the 2 girls. However, both Xiao and Yoon don't believe him. Xiao goes over and kicks him in the face again. They start hitting our hero. Soon after, they were sitting on the bed. The succubus asks her sister what should be done. Xiao says it's probably true. He would be in danger. But the question remains, is it really necessary for both to practice at the same time? There was no other cultivator in this world besides the two of them. So, they get a bit thoughtful, wondering if it really is the only way. Yoon says if Sister Xiao doesn't mind, she doesn't either. The girl knew this was the last way out. She blushes, hesitating whether to accept or not. Then, she calls her sister's name. Yoon says she talks a lot about being with our hero, but when the time came, she got nervous and admitted out loud she doesn't understand double cultivation. Then Yoon giggles mischievously, says she knew that from the start, but pats her sister's head and says not to worry. They just have to practice cultivation and try hard to do it right. The girl stays there all embarrassed. Later, our protagonist was recovering. He had gotten beaten up a lot. He didn't know if they would want to train with him. They ended up calling the hero. He was surprised. When he looked, he saw the two calling him for triple cultivation. They told him to go for it right away. Looks like our hero is reaching the final stages. He had brought a sacred treasure, a sheet made of magical fabric from the Man sect. He spreads it on the bed, saying that will help recover energy better. Yoon had also received jade pillows, which could be combined with the sheet. She hands them to our protagonist. He doesn't understand why the master gave these pillows to them, and not to him. Poor Xiao was left out. She didn't receive any item to practice cultivation. Besides that, he brought another item, a sacred screen, a sect treasure to cultivate with sound isolation. He explains it so as not to disturb other residents, since the noise could be loud. Xiao is very embarrassed. How come making loud noise? Yoon teases, saying our protagonist has many items related to that, and even asks how much experience he must have. He notices they were both suspicious of him. Then he starts to explain. He says he got those items from other sects. He had never practiced that type of cultivation before, and the only thing he knows is from the books he read in the library. Sure. Xiao immediately throws a shoe at his face. Come on, do you want to do the triple cultivation or not? She seemed very anxious. Our protagonist with a cheeky face said he really wanted to. So finally, the time had come. The two had put spiritual energy to make a kind of projection of our protagonist. They even commented that his material body was very cute. At that moment, our protagonist became thoughtful. Then he started to shrink even more. Xiao says he is not shrinking, but growing. He is increasing his power level. Thus, his energy kept growing. Yoon comments that our protagonist's talent is very big. This was the result of pure yang cultivation. He was regaining the powers he had at the beginning. Soon after, he uses liberation and returns to the material world. He asks which one of the two will come first. Xiao, very anxious, says it will be her. Our protagonist grabs the girl's arm, saying there is no time to lose. He pulls her along. Yoon stays there watching everything. She couldn't believe this was really happening. Half an hour later, Xiao says she would like to rest. But our hero says cultivation has no time for rest, and pulls the girl again. Half an hour had passed and she was already very tired. Then Yoon asks if he would like to rest, but he grabs her arm again, says once more that cultivation has no rest, and pulls the girl, the succubus. The scene changes to the next day. While the two girls slept like angels, he had advanced a lot in his cultivation realm. Thanks to the triple cultivation, he decides to go outside the house. Since the spiritual energy supply time had passed, probably the church knight would find him. He puts his hand to the sky, feeling a very strong light. He didn't expect to be found so quickly. Not even 10 seconds passed, and there was that teleport light opening a huge portal. It seemed the final battle time had finally come. The girls realized that Big Brother was outside, and they went there to watch the battle. But he shouted loudly, telling them to have breakfast and not worry about him. He turned to Azuri and asked why they didn't fight somewhere else. The girl replied she could accept that. Then he snapped his fingers and summoned his celestial swords, "See you in the sky," and flew away at the highest speed. The girl noticed that guy had changed. He was no longer the same. She flew to him. Arriving in the sky, they were ready for battle. Luke was very serious. He ended up extending his hands. "I am Luke from the Mim sect, and I demand your sword." Down below, the two were watching everything. Xiao was very tense, wondering if he would manage to defeat that girl, but of course he would. He is Big Brother, he always wins. Besides, he had practiced triple cultivation with them last night, so he should be much stronger. He even teased Xiao, saying she did very well, and that any man would like to be in Luke's place. That made the girl embarrassed. She started patting her sister. They wondered if that cultivation was enough for him to gain a holy class power. In response, Yoon said the brother had good skill. It was the sword skill. Besides, he had already demanded Azuri's sword. They had never seen him lose a single battle, so they could trust him. That sword mastery technique he learned from the Mumbai sect. After going through several sects and learning their techniques, he ended up becoming the strongest sword cultivator in the world. So basically, there was no way he could lose this battle. The scene returns to the fight happening in the sky. We see Luke holding Azuri's sacred sword, in an imposing way. He asks if now she doesn't seem as dominant as before. Quite hurt, and with blushing cheeks, she asks who that boy was. He was at master class, while she was at holy class, and yet, she managed to lose to him. The most interesting thing was how he managed to take her sword. He realized the girl used a dual sword technique, one to attack and the other to defend. Azuri was surprised, because he uncovered all her techniques. He realized this in that first battle. About taking her sword, he had a secret. Have you ever heard of the innate sword constitution? She had never heard of it. In this world, there was no cultivation to explain that in a way she could understand. He was born with the gift to talk to swords. She doesn't understand how that could be possible. Luke explains that the girl's sword spoke very well of her. All that seemed very confusing. So, she puts her hands together. Master Luke chuckles. Says there's no need to prolong this talk. She was tense. She would use her last final card. It didn't seem logical someone could see through swords. In response, he said the girl could use even the most secret technique she had. Even so, it wouldn't be enough to defeat him. Then he starts provoking the girl. Tells her to show all the skills the god she belonged to gave her. You will regret this. No, I will not. In fact, I have been waiting for this for a long time. She joins her hands, makes the summoning seal. Her eyes begin to shine. She recites the secret chant. It was as if she was summoning the Son of God himself. A gigantic light fell from the sky. After hitting our hero, he was teleported to an alternate universe. The whole place turned white. What kind of domain have I been teleported to? At that moment, he realizes there was someone in front of him. It looked like a gigantic statue, with the body of a completely white woman. She had an imposing appearance. She was 3 times bigger than him. Could this be the so-called Son of God? Actually, this was the pinnacle of the immortal realm. Meanwhile, the 2 girls were down below, not knowing what was happening in the battle in the sky. Xiao had back pain, so Yu Yun decided to give her a massage. They said the meridians in her back had all gotten messed up. Giving a massage was a way to relax and also reorganize the energy. These massage techniques were passed down generation to generation within the Musean sect. They stayed there giving massages while our protagonist fought. Yoon asks her sister to turn onto her back. The girl asks if it was really necessary. She replied yes, because she needed to finish the massage. The scene returns to the battle in the skies. Quite some time had passed. The 2 were starting to get worried. It was already getting dark, and the fight still hadn't ended. They decided to look again through the window. The sky was completely dark. It looked like an apocalypse and global destruction were coming. They even imagined this would be the end of our protagonist. And they even said he was an idiot who always put himself in danger. The place where that room was located was shaking a lot. Using his swords, Luke tries to protect himself. However, the powers of that Son of God were stronger. His sword ended up breaking. He grabbed his other sword to try to hold back the attack. He ended up sticking it into the ground so he wouldn't fly away. He did not expect the girl really had power like that. He realizes that the god of this world was extremely powerful. At the same time, he was trying to analyze all this information. His celestial swords were all broken. There wasn't a single one left. Meanwhile, the Son of God was walking toward him. Simple mortal, how dare you brandish your sword before a god? This was only a projection of this god. It wasn't exactly the god. He had already realized this. The divine being stops before our protagonist and extends her foot to his face. She said that to receive her forgiveness, he would need to kiss her feet. However, he would never do that to a god. And he starts laughing. That's really ridiculous. Do you really think I will kiss a god's feet? What sense does it make to worship a deity that humiliates its followers? Foolish mortal, I spared your life because I saw you had many gifts. If you swear loyalty to me, assuming a position as a knight of the Pope, I might consider letting you live. He thinks about those words. Even the gods of this world recognized his gifts. He said that if by chance this supposed god found his master, the conversation would be impressive. Then he remembers the first time he met his master. She was crouching, asking if the little boy was lost. She had recognized little Luke. She said divine light dripped over his head and traveled through all his muscles and bones. The little boy didn't understand anything. She just seemed like a crazy woman. She said her name was Luchi, and that she was the master of the Musan sect. She ended up extending her hands, saying it was a pleasure to meet him. However, logically, the little boy didn't believe it. This master was extremely famous. Then the girl hands him a leaflet containing her self-portrait. She does the same hairstyle to see if he could recognize her. Look, the little boy was already watching. When she realized the little boy was looking at his parents, she began to pull his cheek. After that day, he started walking with this master. She taught him a lot of things, but in the end, what he really wanted to learn was immortal cultivation. Cultivating immortality meant easing the restlessness of the body and mind, and also nurturing the spirit. I have heard about this. It means we need to practice austerity through meditation and other things. The master was happy since her little student was very smart. She gently strokes his head. He was shocked thinking about that memory. According to northern legends, there is a plain that had only winters for thousands of years. Even in that place, there was a sect. Even though the climate was extremely harsh, there was a sect called Japenica. The people were made of completely transparent bodies. At the edge of the eastern sea, there was a dark abyss so deep that not even life energy escaped. The reason for that was the existence of a gigantic beast from ancient times. This world was limitless, from the void to the abyss. All the nations of the human world compete for supremacy. The strange desert beasts appeared one after another. There is also the demon race, which lived isolated for 1,000 generations. The primordial chaos of life and death in the spiritual world. Alien and unknown peoples. Heavenly caves never seen before. Indeterminate trajectories. Wonderful spectacles not found elsewhere. All kinds of things like that were excessively vast. It was not possible to observe everything, not even in a full lifetime. Basically, she was saying that in the entire world, in the whole universe, there were infinite things. It was impossible for a mortal person to observe everything. She thought that was incredible. The little boy agreed, saying it really was very cool. She asked why immortal gods would create something so magnificent so mere humans could not enjoy it. Is that so? So the gods are all liars? Aren't the gods so magnificent? She laughs because he drew those conclusions on his own. She said she didn't really believe in immortal gods because she didn't trust them. That's why she wanted to see them in person. Her wish was to see if the gods were as magnificent as people said. That's why she spent so much time practicing cultivation to become an immortal. If she met them and found out they weren't so great, she would definitely eliminate them. If the gods weren't so incredible, she would do it herself. She would end all of them. And that was the philosophy of our hero, which he had inherited from his master. We, immortal cultivators, must challenge the celestial order and kill the gods. Cultivators had the potential to break all limits. Extending his hand, he said he could even be considered a pseudo-god. However, he would not demand things from humans that would bring him sadness. Thus, he lowered his 2 fingers and did that right in front of that goddess. Her eyes slowly began to change appearance. "You are very interesting. What is your name, mere mortal?" He realized that now it wasn't just a projection. Who was there was really God. "Well, I won't change my first or last name. I am your father." She realized this boy was a joker and ended up smiling. Soon after, she began to split in half thanks to Master Luke's attack. Before departing, she said she would like to meet him personally, face to face. That statue began to emit a light, and right after, it started to break. He stepped back a little, and not only the statue, but the entire room began to fall into ruins. He realized this dimension was collapsing. Then, he turned to return to his world, leaving that statue exploding behind. Come on, guys. What a magnificent story. If you got this far and haven't left a comment, please, guys, leave a comment to help recommend this video. And if you are watching on your phone, just swipe sideways in the comments and give the video a high 5. I count on your help. The sky began to open, and the elf village was now fully lit. The leader asked what that was, and we see that the whole world was covered in darkness. Even the forest slimes noticed the change in the weather. The city was now illuminated, and the knight Livia was a bit worried about her master. Back at the lodge, we see the 2 girls a little more relieved. They realized the young master was alive, and even commented that he was an idiot for making them worry. Yoon said she always trusted the young master's sword technique. They kept saying he was amazing. Then Yoon celebrated, saying the brother had won. So they should change clothes and go there to greet him. However, Xiao got jealous. She kept saying she wouldn't go, putting psychological pressure. The succubus said it would be very nice for the 2 to welcome our protagonist. However, Xiaola was very shy and didn't want to see him. The girl teased, "Ah, so you won't go?" With a slightly pouty face, Xiao confirmed she wouldn't greet our protagonist. "Look, I'm going to have him all to myself, huh?" The girl was dying of jealousy, but still didn't give in. To finish the tease, she said, "Since I'll arrive first, I'll give our protagonist a big kiss." As she was leaving, she remembered something. She peeked to see if Xiao wasn't watching. Then she went there and took Xiao's clothes. She was doing this to provoke her sister. Her intent was for the girl really not to go, and for her to greet Luke alone. After Yoon left, the girl decided to change clothes secretly to greet the boy. However, her clothes were no longer there. At that moment, she realized everything. She had fallen for the succubus's tactics. She opened her magical arsenal and went inside trying to find some clothes. However, there was only one Taoist outfit. That classic robe wasn't very nice, but it was the only one she had. So, she was stunned, wondering if it was really worth going out there wearing that outfit. Meanwhile, Zuri was falling from the sky. She had been defeated by Luke. Before she could hit the ground, he grabbed the girl's feet. There was our protagonist rescuing her. He even sighed and soon after arrived in a forest. He leaned little Azur against a tree. The girl, shy, asked why he had saved her. Holding the sword, he pointed to the little girl's face. She didn't understand why he was doing that. Soon after, he rested the sword on the ground. "Well, I'm going to let you go." "You're going to let me go? But I wanted to judge you." He just smiled. He had understood the girl's whole story. He said that acting with an iron fist could be tiring. Actually, the girl had never taken anyone's life. She was shocked to hear that from him. "Well, I even have a student like that. She always talks about eliminating opponents, but always feels sick just by seeing a red liquid. Besides that, you held back attacking Yu Yun. If you had attacked seriously, she probably would have been eliminated." The girl stayed silent, knowing he was telling the truth. "Your sword told me many things about you." He realized she was a good girl. Then, he asks why the girl was reluctant to work for the church. She hugs his legs with blushing cheeks. Then, we see a flashback. A little more of this girl's story. She didn't want to work for Santa Fe. However, she ended up being forced to do it. The church practiced many bad things. A former Vatican member had just committed a crime. Azuri knew her friend had done it. However, she decided to look the other way, since her friend was simply trying to escape the place. She knew people didn't always do what they wanted. They did what was necessary. At that moment, the scene cuts to that guy, the necromancer, waking up with his wife. She is happy because he was okay. The guy asks if he hadn't been eliminated. He notices his face had been stitched. "Wait, you stitched my head?" "Yes, you taught me." At that moment, he realized that the Pope's knight had not dealt a blow to eliminate him. She did it on purpose, just to pretend she fulfilled the mission. The guy's wife confirms, saying that Azuri, that Pope's knight, let them survive. Could it be she wanted us to escape? They understood that the girl realized they weren't guilty of the crimes of the old women disappearing in the village. The guy even felt a bit more hopeful, since even though the church did many evils, there were still some people inside with a good heart. He realized she had let them survive even without the Pope's approval. This girl really was a worthy knight. She had become the newest knight of the Holy Pope, and that happened when she was very little. Right after her birth, everyone noticed she was born with the favor of the Son of God, and everyone said she was very lucky. However, those people didn't seem well-intentioned and were already guiding her to a cruel fate. In fact, she would become a puppet of the church. All she wanted was to live her life the way she really wanted and not be manipulated by supposedly divine beings. However, the pressure she suffered was very big since she was born with natural talent. After suffering a lot, she had been approved as the Pope's knight. But that was not what she wanted. Her real dream was to go back home and live happily with her parents on the farm. The little girl ended up being taken away when she was only 5 years old. Upon arriving in the capital, she was trained to become a servant of God. When he talked with the girl's sword, he understood everything about her. The girl was very sad. "Why don't you just abandon the church and leave?" However, she felt very afraid. "Are you afraid of him? Afraid of God?" She couldn't just run away, since the church could track her. "Well, but what do you want to do? How do you feel about it?" She says she doesn't know. Since she had sacred arts, they could track her wherever she went. Extending his hands, he asks her to give them. "Give me your sacred arts." She is shocked to hear those words from him. Without thinking twice, she ends up handing over her swords. He takes that artifact and throws it inside his magical arsenal. He says that if the swords were kept there would be no problem, because the church would never be able to track her. With blushing cheeks, she thanks him. He immediately asks what she wants to do. After being defeated by him and losing her sacred arts, what she wanted most was one thing: finally, to go back home and live a peaceful life with her parents. Thus, he had said goodbye to Azuri. Returning home, he ended up meeting Yu Yun. She comes running and hugs him, squeezing his shoulders. In the corner, we see that Xiao was trying to spy on Luke. He quickly noticed his other sister was hiding. He asked what she was doing there, spying on them. At that moment, the big guy got all cheeky, because his student was wearing a Taoist outfit and welcoming him. At that moment, his nose started to run. As soon as they returned to the inn, they got a little shy. The big guy couldn't stop looking at her, finding her very beautiful. He even put his hand on his nose, trying to stop it from running. Yu Yun ended up coughing to cover it up. She asks what happened to that night. In response, Luke said he sent her to the farm. Xiao already starts thinking nonsense. Then, he explains everything that happened, saying that, actually, she was a good person. Besides that, he had stolen the cultivation bases from the two girls and forgot to mention that to them. Then, Xiao discovered that triple cultivation had a disadvantage for them. To give the cultivation back to them, they had to cultivate again. Yoon says she is willing, and that makes Xiao very embarrassed. The two end up putting their hands on our protagonist's shoulders and pull him back to bed. 24 hours had passed. The big guy seemed to be in heaven, since he had again practiced triple cultivation. This one was getting good at the subject. When he noticed Xiao was wearing that Taoist outfit, his nose started running again. Soon after, he changed clothes. Extending his hand, she wonders if cultivation had returned by chance. She tries to analyze well. Then, Luke ended up hearing the girls screaming. They realized that, even practicing triple cultivation again, they did not recover their cultivation stage. Basically, our hero had lied to them just to get some credit. Yoon also wakes up and realizes she had not recovered her powers either. Logically, they start complaining to our hero. The big guy realized he was in a dead end and that he had no more excuses to give. He even starts to sweat cold. They shout very loudly since their two soul-nascent cultivation bases were cut by a sword. He tries to explain, saying they misunderstood. He was facing the pinnacle of the immortal realm. Since he had fought a goddess, he did not have much energy in his body to compensate them. Oh yeah? Then why didn't you say that before? Calm down. I promise I will return your energy. However, he gives a deadline of 2 months, or rather, 1 month. Wait, if you didn't have energy, then why did you say that to us? Exactly, Master Luke. Why did we do triple cultivation for a whole day if you didn't have enough energy? Well, didn't you tell me to stop? This guy was shameless. Xiao gets very angry, while Yu Yun looks cheeky. They both end up hitting him. The scene changes to Mount Heng, on the border of Ide City. We see two characters facing a nameless cave. He was entering to complete a mission, and it seemed there was a powerful creature inside. It was a kind of legendary dragon called the Lava Dragon. The creature was formidable, and the boy gets very happy. He was the hero trying to complete missions and level up. He already draws his legendary sword. Meanwhile, his helper was deciphering all the buff spells and ends up casting a level 3 blessing magic. After receiving this support magic, he thanks his companion. Facing that dragon, he said he would end it now. He jumps and, facing the dragon, prepares to give his most powerful attack. The attack is so strong it ends up splitting the dragon in two. Thus, he completed the mission, which was from a legendary class, and the dragon was extremely dangerous. He closes that poster. His name was Jack, and he was from the pseudo-legendary class. He celebrates, saying their destiny now was Ade City. However, his support ends up falling to the ground, very tired. She tries to get up, while he says he will go after treasures and beautiful women. Back at our protagonist's chalet, he was saying it was time to evaluate the treasures they had obtained. It was good to do that to see if they were well off financially. First of all, he was going to show some of the items. The best of all were those 2 swords he had gotten from Azuri, because they were sacred arts swords. The girls already wanted to know how he got those artifacts. He kept there singing victory, saying he was the big boss. Xiao even imagined that he must have done wrong things to get those swords, but he said he simply asked the girl if she wanted to leave the church, and she ended up giving those swords willingly. In Xiao's mind, she already imagined our protagonist threatening that little girl with his celestial sword. She even slaps our protagonist's face, calling him shameless. The guy was confused since he did nothing wrong. Then, he explains again, saying those swords could be tracked by the daughter of God. So, he simply stored them so the little girl could escape after TCI. He says he will show the next item, and ends up revealing a fragment of that statue. They ask, "What the hell is that?" He explains it's from a statue he had defeated. This statue was a representation of the Son of God. This fragment was nothing but a projection, but it was very powerful. Yu Yun watches that artifact to see if it really had any power. Jack, meanwhile, kept bragging, saying she was very amazing. However, they couldn't use that sword because it emitted too much energy. It would also attract the church members' attention, but they could use that small stone to cultivate, since it had massive power. But how? How are we going to use this? I don't really understand, she asks. He said they just had to drain its energy. At that moment, that small fragment starts emitting a very strong light. He didn't know what it was. Before he expected, the statue of the Son of God appeared there. The 2 girls get scared, asking, "What the hell is a giant statue like that here in the room? How come? Did it activate with something I said?" He checks all parts of the statue and realizes that, even being a statue, it had complete internal organs. What do you mean? What do you want to say with that? What I mean, he ends up touching the statue's shoulder, is that it would be very useful if we used the pearl diving technique. Xiao doesn't believe her master is proposing they cultivate with that statue. He explains that the pearl diving technique would be very useful for them to drain the statue's energy. That would be great because he could split the cultivation base with the two of them. Since he didn't have much energy to restore them to their original power, they could simply drain it from that statue. The girls think about how that would be possible. They even imagine themselves cultivating with the statue. However, it was very bizarre, and they said it wouldn't be possible. But Yuyun even seemed willing to try. Xiao doubted and shouted at her sister, saying these things were very strange. They shouldn't lower themselves to that level. Guys, it's just an object. This is much more normal than you think. To be honest, it's not really a statue, it's more like a puppet. That only made things worse. He immediately took off his coat. However, Xiao punched him in the face, saying if he wanted to do that, he would have to do it somewhere else. Besides, she didn't want to see that scene because it would horrify her. The guy wondered if it really was as strange as they said. After thinking a bit, he assured it would be very beneficial since they could greatly increase their cultivation. Xiao was really incredulous. She didn't believe her master was capable of that, while Yuyun was giggling in the background. With that, he went to another hotel and even took that statue with him. He had paid about 5 coins to stay the night. After placing the statue in the center of the room, he kept thinking. By his estimate, he could rise to the base of the sacred cultivation realm. Xiao's and Yuyun's nascent cultivation bases ended up filling his body. Since he had battled a lot, he lost much energy, so this statue would be like a battery for him. However, he would have to be careful, because if he was too anxious and pulled too much energy, he could end up breaking his meridians. Obviously, that wasn't what he wanted. That's why he ended up doing the pearl diving technique. After taking off his shirt, he started to concentrate. It might look a little strange, but still, he put his hand on the statue, draining its energy. He even gave that sly smile because it was working. In a few moments, his eye started to change color. It seemed the energy of that statue was really magnificent. However, it was much greater than he expected. Because of that, he ended up suffering damage and even vomited a red liquid. That ended up staining the statue. He started to worry if he had broken his meridians, or if, by chance, his realm had been broken. He decided to check his body to see if his spirit had not been broken. After a while, he realized everything was fine, but it ended up being somewhat harmful to his body. He didn't expect the energy of that statue to be so abrupt. That's why he would need the help of his 2 students to do a safer cultivation. Still, it was as if that statue were a kind of battery where he could keep recharging his chi. After this training, he finally surpassed Xiao's and Yuyun's cultivation level. Soon after, at that hotel, someone ended up arriving. The girl told the hero there were still people at that hotel. I know that. As a hero, I will exercise my privileges to search the rooms. He ended up opening our hero's room, and there was Luke practicing cultivation. And the most shocking thing, there was a statue of the Son of God on the bed. To make it worse, it was dirty. The guy started to get nervous, stammering and asking, "What is that boy doing? What are you doing with the statue of the Son of God?" Our hero realized the situation would be hard to explain. So, he started activating his smooth-talking mode. He asked the boy to wait because he was going to put on his shirt. Right after, while trying to make an excuse, he pretended he was stretching. When he finally activated smooth-talking mode, he asked the redhead who he was. In response, he said he was the registered hero Jace and was exercising his looting privileges. What do you mean, looting? What is that? Oh, right. Heroes can loot, right? I'm looking for something here for you. Just a moment. Our hero ends up showing something to the boy. Actually, it was a small statue of himself. He even tries to trick the boy, saying it was an extremely valuable item because it belonged to a mystical king. The hero looks at that statue along with his friend, and they wonder if it was really true. However, at that moment, that statue ends up exploding, spraying liquid everywhere. That water splashes on the girl's face, and also a bit on the hero's face. It was nothing more than a fake statue, basically a disguise mechanism. All this so our hero could gain time and escape from there. We already saw that our protagonist is a specialist in escaping trouble. He ended up using teleportation, returning to the room with his students. He was sweaty and very nervous. Xiao asked how the cultivation with the statue went. However, that wasn't what caught her attention. The girl noticed the statue was dirty. He tried to explain, saying that stain was actually his, from his wound. Yuyun had the most polluted mind of all, and already started saying the master was shameless. She even said that if she had known he was going to do that kind of thing, she would have gone along. She remembers that the last time they practiced triple cultivation, they barely could move because their legs were hurting. Why didn't you tell me? If I had known at the time, I would have stopped. Both Xiao and Yuyun go over and kick him in the face. He explains that actually, that red stain was the blood he vomited since he trained a lot. However, now he had an even bigger problem. Very worried, Xiao asks what happened. Then, he ends up explaining everything to them about the hero he met. That makes them desperate, asking what will happen if someone finds out they have a statue of the Son of God. Yuyun knows very well that heroes in this world are extremely powerful. He explains they can be a little calm because he managed to recover some of his power. However, that boy named Jace seemed to be a very strong registered hero. When they hear he was a registered hero, they get even more worried, because it was someone who had legendary weapons. Yuyun even said these heroes have many privileges and could even get help from the church. And Luke still says they need to help him get a disguise. Xiao gets angry, saying it's all his fault, and starts hitting our hero. Well, to sum up, we need to get some disguise. For now, disguise. But with our power, we can't make the moon mirror flower. Disguise, but with our current power, we can't make that illusion magic. Since they had lost cultivation energy, they couldn't do that spell to change appearance, called moon mirror flower. Thinking a bit more, it seemed he had an idea. What do you think about simply going back to embrace the old tradition? That is, using disguise clothes. And of course, he was going to put very beautiful clothes on his students. He even comments that Xiao looked perfect. Yuyun had also put on another outfit, handpicked by Master Luke. He still comments that she looked magnificent. The two were a bit embarrassed and asked Master Luke if they really looked different with those clothes. The guy assured them yes. Meanwhile, he was only wearing a little mustache to disguise. Xiao asks, "What the hell is this tradition of going back? We didn't change anything." In his defense, the big guy said those clothes were actually Yuyun's idea. She said that, in this world, it's very common to see a rich guy surrounded by his servants. So basically, they were wearing maid clothes as part of the disguise. Xiao asks if they also needed to act like maids. In response, the girl said the maid code of conduct was the following. They should obey unconditionally the greetings and the word of the master. Xiao shouldn't forget that from now on, they were Luke's maids. Therefore, they should respect all his requests. She turns to our hero, asking if that's really what they should do. The guy gives that sly little laugh. Xiao had understood, and asks Master Luke if she is also a good maid.